Welcome everybody, this is Phil back with Professional Painter and Decorator. Back with adding to that product testing playlist that we've got. Now, I'd like to say I'm a real influencer in the industry of painting and decorating. I think I'm a long way off it. But, as with any decorator that's been around a while, or firm of decorating that's been around a while, you often get your paint reps coming to see you to say, try this paint out, try that paint out, try that roller out, try this roller tape out, and try some brushes out. Now, recently, I've had my local paint rep for the Cerit, do we pronounce it Cerit products, which are your B-line, your Kana brushes, like what I'm showing you, your mask tapes. If my assistant behind me can pass me a roll of tape. My assistant behind me passes me a roll of tape. Let's go and get it myself. You know, the mask tapes and stuff like that. My local rep came round and says, Phil, got a few bits and pieces, not loads. Few bits and pieces, would you like to try them out? And I said, yeah, more than welcome. Showed him Dave the Door. Do you know who that is? I look nothing like him. Look, for a start, I'm better looking. Anyway, right. My paint rep came round, or suppliers rep came round and said, got a few brushes, want you to try. And it's the Kana range. And you might have seen a short on this recently where I just said, what do you think of it? Right, we'll come on to it. Right, I'll just tell you briefly. Kana range, they're a German brand. I'll read the bump on the packet. Right, these are the Kana Aqua. So they're geared up for water-based paints. For superior paint loading and release, for an excellent brush mark-free finish. Excellent. We like the sound of that. Right, no bristle loss. I'm yet to find a brush that doesn't lose the odd bristle. Long life. Now, this one I'm holding is a 2-inch, 50mm. Obviously, wash them out before use if that's the way inclined you are. This brush here is, what do we call it? Let's call it a loading brush. This is a brush that the filament, the bristle, is quite firm. So these bristles are a synthetic, ideal for water-based. They've got actually, if you can just see, they've got a soft, I'll call it a soft tipped end. We used to call them hammered back in the day. And these are a loading brush. And when I mean a loading brush, these are the brushes, more your workhorse brushes for your water-based paints. Now, particularly when it comes to water-based paints, dare I say, woodwork paints, trim paints if you're in America. Oh, I hate that word. These are the paint brushes that you'd use to put your undercoats on and your first top coats if you're doing a 3-coat paint system. You put the paint on, lay it off, job's a good one. But interestingly, in this range of paint brushes, you've got the Kana Premier brushes. They do, and I'll read this one. This is the Kana Finish Brush. Now, if you see the bristles on that, they are so soft. Can you see how they flop? They are so soft. Now, when the rep came round, I said, there's no way you're going to get any paint on with that. He goes, the idea isn't to get so much the paint on, it's the finishing coat brush. So you've already got the paint on with the undercoat. You've already got the paint on with the first top coat. And then you come with this brush, which is the Premier Kana Finish, thin and finely pointed filaments for the ultimate, and we love the ultimate surface finish. So in effect, you've got your paints on, you're finishing off with this, like a laying off brush. And because they are so soft, they'll flow out that paint that you're using. Now, the paint that you're using has got to be a proper acrylic water-based paint, not a hybrid, not an alkyd hybrid, a proper acrylic paint. Your Bedex. Yeah, and as we're trying today, we've got Isolac. Isolac's a cracking brand of paint, lovely acrylic, lovely flow properties. So we're going to give it a go. Now, I'm going to put the undercoat on with this. I'm also going to put the first top coat on with this. and then we're going to finish off with this brush. And this is your brush. This is your brush that's got a plastic ferrule. Now, I asked the question in my short. Let's get rid of this. I asked the question in my shorts: metal, stainless steel ferrules, or plastic. Now, plastic in Germany is a big seller, mainly because they're a lot easier to clean off if you get paint on them, and I can understand that. But over here, traditionally, we think of a ferrule as start the bristle length out and the handle, the pins holding it in place. Is this the way forward? Are we a little bit behind the times in the UK because we think of anything plasticky as a DIYer's brush? And there's nothing wrong with a DIYer's brush if it gives you the finish. But I'll be interested to see what this brush does for me, how it performs, whether that ferrule is actually something to get used to and I'll like, or whether I like the ferrule that's going to be stainless steel traditional. I'm not sure. But what I do like, and I've mentioned this on other brush videos, I do like a raw, and I'll say a raw, wooden handle. I'm not that bothered about them varnished up. I like them raw. And then, yeah, I can feel it. I can feel like I'm actually holding it. It's not slipping out my fingers. So let me crack on. I've got some Isolac Aqua Primer. I'm going to prime out Dave the Door, and then I'll come back to you after I've used that and just give a quick thought, and then I'll move on for you. Leave it with me. Just to confirm, this is what I'm using, Isolac Primer, Aqua. You have to thin the Isolac stuff. I've only poured about 5% water, if that. Got it in my little paint bucket stroke kettle, and I'm going to start. I'll bring the sides down. I know what the paint's like. If you want to see a video on what this paint's like, it's there. But for the purpose of this video, I just want to talk about the brushes, how that applies. You'll see me just applying it on this, then we'll fast forward, then we'll come back at the end. So bear with me. Right, you're bearing with me straight away. Actually, I'm just going to tell you what this paint. I'm just bedding my brush into the paint, working off one side of the kettle, scrubbing it about, building it up. I've not washed them out. Oh, smell the proper acrylic in that. You see how the tips have gone like that? A little bit hollow in the middle, because that's going to hold the paint. Right, let's crack on with the side. I have to say I do like Isolac products. This primer goes on a dream, particularly when you've just got that little bit of water in it. Just letting it off with the tips of the bristles there. Scrub that fatty edge off so you don't get any build up, just with the heel of the brush. Keep your brush wiped down. Right, picking up again one side of the kettle. I'm starting with my mouldings. Tips of the bristles. I'm not wanting to overload the surface. Going all the way around the moulding. All the way around. This side of Dave the Door, a few videos back. Oh, that feels quite a stiff, firm bristle. Putting on crow's nesting. That's actually quite nice. Dave the Door was coated up this side a few videos back with Heritage undercoat and Heritage eggshell top coat. It only had one top coat. I have to say that didn't go on bad. That feels like you're putting a decent amount of paint on with a nice bristle. Again, if you're a decorator that's used to oil-based paints and a traditional pure bristle brush, getting your head wrapped around using a brush that's synthetic, it's not the easiest thing to. It's not the easiest thing to get used to straight away. But we're not bad. Right, let's fast forward. I have to say, quite impressed with that. Let me put paint down. Just talking about brushes. That is still kept its shape, and I've done the door. A lot of the problems you have when you get the wrong brush with the wrong types of paint is the brush can cripple and it can break the back of the brush and it goes all over the place. That video there on the brush killer, the Jono's brush killer, you know which one I'm on about. You can be washing your brush out, you can be using it, you can be trying to get, it ruins your brushes. Now, these synthetic brushes should be, I call it a hand in glove with water-based paints. If you try and use a traditional pure bristle brush with water-based paints, you're probably not getting the best finish. You need these flagged tipped smooth filament ends to get the best of the paints. Now I'm very lucky because I'm using a really decent quality paint. This isn't a low-end budget, it's not top-end budget either, but it's a mid-range decent paint. And a bit like when I've been trying to say to people about if you're trying to go from oil-based to water-based paints, and a good one to start off with is that Dulux Heritage. Once you've got into that Dulux Heritage, you might want to try another paint. And I would say, try you've probably seen that video, try the Jono's Aqua Guard, but also start looking at the brands that you've probably not heard of, the Isomat, because these are paints that are still a 3-coat paint system, but they are giving you a lovely finish. And these are proper acrylic based. These are proper acrylic, easy to wash out your brushes and gives you a lovely finish. I've been talking to you, I mean, we're going to be a 20-30 minute video like normal, aren't we? But that is drying, there is drying already. That's how good this paint is. But we're not talking about this paint, we're talking about the brush. And that applied the brush lovely. It released the paint nicely, like it said. I had one bristle loss. Oh, shall I send it back? What's the guarantee? Shall I send it back? I will see in a bit. I won't show you coating that door up with this brush again, with the top coat, the Isolac Satin. I will come back to you after I've done that, and we're putting a second top coat on with, can I call it the albino? I'm going to call it the albino. It looks like a bit of yeah, ice cream, doesn't it? I'll see you later, alligator. Okay, we're back. You know what I've been doing? I've put the undercoat on and I've given it one top coat. Now the brush that we used, you know what we've been trying? It's the Kana Aqua, and it's got superior paint loading capability. You know, I've gone through all that. Now I know some of you are probably shouting at me now and saying, Phil, this is an aqua brush for water-based paints. Do Kana do a brush that can take oil-based? Well, yes they do. It's called the Kana Star. So that is another brush for another day. The filament bristles are slightly different, and they've also got that plastic ferrule. So the difference between the bristles you can just see. This is for oil-based and water, but this is mainly for water. So that'll be another review. So we've done that one. Application-wise of that paint, because it's the Isolac, well, undercoat, the Isolac primer undercoat and top coat, very nice. It's actually quite a firm bristle for applying paint. If I go back to the Knorr Heritage that I've been using on a number of videos back, you'll see, look how soft that bristle seems compared to that. That'll be good for cutting in. That is good for banging paint on, if that makes sense. But no, this has laid off the paint really nicely. We're moving on now because we're wanting to use the Kana Finish. Can I finish it in time? Can I do this under 30 minutes? Of course I can. Boom, boom. So we've got the Kana, we've got the Premier, we've got the Kana Finish, and this is the one that I'm calling the albino. This is such a soft bristle. I'm a bit dubious. I'll see how it goes. Now, again, I've told you at the beginning of this, we've got the raw handles, very nice to hold. I don't like the varnished handles on other brushes. But this is a 50mm. Now, look how soft that is. Very, compared to what we have been using. That feels quite coarse. Look at that. Nice. Now, I'll just go back onto these. These plastic ferrules, apparently in Germany where these are developed, they're very popular because it makes the brush ferrule easier to clean down, which I can understand because the plastic is going to chip the paint off. Well, the paint will chip off the plastic. So let's crack on with this and let's see how we go with the final, because these are for final finishing painting. Let's see how we go final finishing of the Isomat Isolac Satin using this very, very soft bristled brush. Will it work? Let's get my paint out. All right. Work from one side of the kettle. I've just bedded my brush in, so just bedded it in so it's all full of paint. And let's see how we go. Let's go down the, I'm doing the latch edge at the moment. I won't subject you to all the talky through the dory, Dave the door. Ooh. Now don't forget this paint that I'm using, the Isomat, you do thin it by, well, I've got it thinned to 5%, which is lovely. I have to say that's just the edge of the door. It does go on really nice, that. Let's see what we like on the mouldings. It actually feels like you haven't got any control over that bristle. I'm not sure I'd want to be cutting in a straight line with it, but that's not the idea of the brush. This is to get paint on and then lay it off and leave very little brush marks. And from what I'm seeing now on this paint here, I can see what it means. I feel I've just got to put enough paint on so there's enough paint for the brush to lay it off. I.e., don't be scrubbing it out. And when you apply the paint, use all the length of the bristle to get it on. Don't be just using the tips to apply the paint. It's the tips of the bristles. It's the tips of the bristles that you'll be laying off with. So that paint's applied now. I'm just going to start laying it off. Quickly horizontally. Wipe the brush down again. And then let's go for it. Now if you see when I do my laying off, I'll come from the top to about 3/4 to about 90% down, and then I'll feather it back up from the bottom. Now you can rotate that from top to bottom, whether you go further down with your top stroke or shorter with your bottom, or further with your bottom, shorter with the top. It's not clever. Just so you're not feathering off and laying off all at the same position. I think I've got bits in my paint. Now once you've laid that off, literally the tips of the bristles are keeping quite sharp look. Can you see that? Yeah. Just make sure you just feather off your moulding. Just check it. No runs. And you know what? That's actually been better than I thought. I think how it holds together for laying off, I can see that that is a nice, I'll bring you in a minute. Oh, I'll see if I can do it now. Yeah, you can see your brush marks, but that will flow out. So let me get the bottom section done and I'll come back and talk to you when I'm just doing these top parts there. I'm back. I've done the bottom section. I must say, this If you've never used one of these brushes before, you're going to be a bit, ooh, I'm not too sure. I think it's one of these brushes that you've got to get used to. It seems very soft. Oh, I've got to, there's 3, 4, there's 4 bristles I've pulled out, and I've just seen one on there, so I've pulled 5 bristles out of that. Now, does it say no bristle loss? Pulled 5 out. Probably if I'd have washed that brush out first, they'd have come out in that first wash, but I didn't do. Yeah, it's a brush that you probably take a bit of getting used to, because you don't feel like you can apply a lot of paint all in one go because it's so soft. But once you've wiped that brush down to lay off, you can feel the benefits of it. There's no reason why, particularly with the water-based, we're talking about water-based paints. If you are using water-based paints and want something to lay off a paint so you've got less brush marks, this is going to be the brush for you. You don't need one of those, oh, what are they? Hamilton laying off brushes. Those thin, look like a wafer thin sandwich, you know what I mean? These are going to do it all in one. This will be your applicator of your paint and also your laying off of the paint. And so far, I'm quite liking it. And I'm thinking I've got a job coming up where I'm going to be using a water-based gloss. And I'm needing a nice finish with that water-based gloss. And this, quite possibly, will be the brush that I want to lay off with. It's so soft for laying off, so soft. I'm probably at an unfair advantage as well, because the Isomat paints are very nice. But that's what I wanted to use, a proper acrylic waterborne paste, not a paste. Paste, dear, I don't want to be using paste. A waterborne paint. We don't want to be using a hybrid with this. We want a proper water-based paint. So many paints at the minute, you're questioning what they actually are. They're saying they're water-based, but actually if you look into it a bit more on the data sheets, they're not. Right, I'm going to go down again and then I'll come back up. Right, first things first, from the bottom I pulled another couple of hairs, bristles. So I'm at a total of 7 bristles that have come out of that. Hold on. 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 11 bristles. Is that quite good? I think if that was a traditional pure bristle brush and you pulled 11 out in one go, you'd go, ooh, with these being so fine, it's probably passable. But what you don't want to do is, because these are so pale, they get stuck on your surface and you don't notice it. Because I did have one on the surface here and I had one down at the bottom down there. So I've taken 11 out. Is that passable? You tell me. But I'm going to say to you, if you're looking at a brush that wants to bang a load of paint on, this isn't going to be the brush for you, because you're traditionally thinking you bang your paint on, lay it off horizontal, crow's nest it horizontal, lay it off vertical with the lengths of your doors, whatever you need, and you move on. This isn't a brush, I'm going to say it for what I'm feeling on this. This isn't a brush for speed paint application. That would be more your Kana Aqua. But you want to lay it off with one of these. So not a bad brush. I quite like it. I can just see that leveling out. And do you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to come back and give the conflab discussion with you at the end. I want to wash that brush out to see what it's like. Let's wait for that to dry and then we'll come back and finish. Thanks for listening. See you in a minute. Or blend out. Right. I've been away. I've had my breakfast because it's early morning. I've washed the brush out, and this is what my brush looks like when it's been washed out. Right, this is what, when we say that a brush cripples, if you've been using paints that are alkyd stroke hybrids and you're struggling with it while you're painting, your brush goes like this. Now, this has only been done in lukewarm water. I've not even used any detergent because that Isomat washes out really nicely. I'm not saying it's crippled as in it's ruined. I think once that dries, a little bit damp, it'll come back to shape. And as I'm doing it now, I'm reforming it. So I'm not too worried about that. I don't think it's a ruined brush. While I was washing out, 2 more bristles came out, and I've just seen 2 more loose bristles there. So I'm up to 15 bristles lost on that brush. And I know I didn't wash it out to start with, and if I'd have done that, I'd have probably lost the bristles before I'd have painted. But what do I think to it? I'm looking at the door. The door's virtually dry now. It's just hanging a bit wet in some of the angles, but back of the hand, I can feel the surface has got less ropiness. I'm going to call it ropiness to the extreme. Ropiness of brush marks. You can see it. The brush marks that you see in the surface, because we are working with water-based paint, are a lot finer than a normal brush, i.e. let's call it a coarser brush. Not a coarser the car, but you know what I mean. And I'm just... Did I like applying the paint by it? I've gone quiet. I like to feel that if I need to move paint about on the surface to lay it off to crow's nest it, I'll go back to this Knorr brush. That could apply the paint, position it, lay it off, and I was quite happy with the finish. This Kana Aqua could apply the paint, I could move the paint around, I was quite happy with the finish. Using this as the finishing brush, I didn't feel I'd got the control to manipulate the paint over the surface. Now, I know it's a finishing off brush and not so much an applicator brush, but I don't want to say is this brush a gimmick, because I'd like to know that there's people out there and commenting saying that you're using it, and you're going to say to me, Phil, give it some more tries, and I will do, because I want to use it with some water-based gloss. But if you're coming into using this brush cold and never used it before, you're going to say to me, Phil, I struggled actually applying enough paint to lay off, i.e. crow's nest it, horizontal laying off, and then the tips of the bristles to lay off. You're going to say to me, you didn't feel you had the control of the brush to apply that paint. And I'm hoping I'm trying to explain that enough. What I'm trying to say is, with that paint, if I'd got an area on that door where it was a little bit paint heavy, I would be able to work it with that brush to move it about so I wasn't applying too much paint. With this brush, I would say I was struggling to move that paint around as much because it was so soft. It's such a soft bristled brush. But the laying off, when I was using just the tips to lay off, no issues whatsoever. So could I do with a brush like that with tips like that? And that is then going back to a proper brush that's had hammered, flagged tip ends, that you can utilise the length of the brush. And when I was applying the paint and I said you've got to use all the brush length to apply it, you're using the application of the brush there. But when you're laying off after you've wiped down your brush, you're literally using the tips of the bristles. You're not putting paint onto the surface, you're laying it off just with the tips. So will I give it another go? Yes. Would I like some feedback from you if you've used one, to give me some pointers, tips? Is it an unusual brush to use? Yes, it is. I'm not going to give up on it, and I'd like you to try one. If you can get your hands on one, they're probably not that expensive. Get your hands on one, see what you think for laying off. What I would say is, I won't be using that for door frames and cutting in on edges around doors. But what I would be using it for is actually the main panels, the main area, a bigger surface area of a door, a wall, you know what I mean. If you've got paneling to do that wants an eggshell stroke satin water-based finish, I won't be trying to cut in with this like your top edge of your skirtings or anything. I just don't feel that there'd be a stiff, that's not a word, a stiff, I won't feel there'd be enough control with the bristles to be stiff enough to give a nice cutting in edge. But that's not what this brush is for, is it? On that note, thanks for listening to me. See you on the next one.